All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Adam Hops with the National Operations Center of Excellence. Thank you so much to Joe Gregory and FHWA for organizing this webinar and applying Tismo to rural areas. We're going to get started in just a moment with the content for the day, and we have some fantastic speakers coming about rural Tismo applications from Georgia, Montana, and South Dakota. But before we begin, a few reminders. In the NOCO webinar system, we recently moved over to the Zoom platform that you're on. For those who haven't been with us yet, we have two ways to get a hold of us during the webinar. The first is the chat box. That's where we'll be posting some links. You can ask any questions that you have about the technology or anything NOCO related. If you have questions for the speakers today, please use the Q&A box. You'll see that right next to the chat box. That's where we can track the questions and make sure that they're being answered at a Q&A at the end. So again, chat box for anything quick where you need to get a hold of me, and that Q&A for anything for the speakers. The webinar, as I mentioned before, is being recorded. The slides and the recording will be available on the NOCO website and in this week's newsletter. Please do, if you're not signed up already, please register for the newsletter there. There's also a closed caption option for the webinar. You should see that option on your control bar on your screen. Again, thank you to Joe and FHWA for organizing this webinar. And Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Adam. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right, great. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for the Center of Excellence for having us here today. So we're hoping our time this afternoon be very fruitful and having a good conversation, good information being conveyed on this timely topic. So real quick introduction, I'm Joe Gregory. I'm with the FHWA Office of Operations in our headquarters in Washington, D.C. So I'm the overall task manager for this particular project that's going to result in a publication that we're hoping to post on our website within the next couple of weeks or so. So stay tuned for that. But the point of this webinar here is to just maybe give you some highlights about what we found in this particular research, but also give you an opportunity to hear from some state DOT peers, specifically from Montana, Georgia, and South Dakota, in terms of how they apply Tismo to a specific activity in rural areas. Excuse me. Next slide. So what we're hoping to cover today is you'll get a chance to get to know each of the speakers, but also just give you some insights. Hopefully I can share some insights from the FHWA in terms of what we're seeing nationally and what we're hoping to get out of this particular project. And then we can get on the peer presenters and, like Adam said, some Q&A, make sure we have enough time for that. Next slide. Thanks. So just real quick, to give you just a background in terms of what we're thinking of as we were developing ideas for this project. During the Sharp 2 phase a few years back, one of the key products we really wanted to really showcase was the capability maturity model, which really focused on building the organizational capacities for state and local agencies as they advance their overall Tismo efforts. And one of the key dimensions of that particular model is culture, really trying to change the culture from what was more, what we consider more legacy culture, but also mainstreaming that culture to really consider Tismo and really support Tismo as they move forward in terms of how they look at their transportation system. One of the key feedbacks that we received as we were doing this was at least perception that Tismo, it's good and all, but it seems like it's only applicable for urban and maybe suburban areas because that's where all the traffic is at. And this created a real challenge, particularly for states and regions that were primarily rural, where they struggle to see how can Tismo really be effective in terms of what we're doing. So recognizing that the rural areas are a completely different dynamic than urban and suburban areas, we still saw some applicability for applying Tismo here, even though it may look slightly different. So we're hoping to really dive in deep into that today. Next slide. So as far as our desired outcomes, we really wanted to capture the current state of the practice of advancing Tismo in rural areas, specifically toward 5 key Tismo strategies or areas: road weather management, incident management, work zone management, plan special events, and those were Tismo strategies that state and local agencies have been doing for quite some time, but particularly hone in on the rural areas. And then the fifth one is seasonal demand. So a lot of rural areas may experience that, especially if they're near some high traffic tourist destinations, such as national parks or ski resorts or even beach destinations, where not even counting the traffic within the parks and the resorts, but the traffic leading into it and coming out of it can create a huge backup on the main route. So we're really hoping to explore that and just share opportunities and challenges for implementing Tismo in these situations. Also, we really want to hone in on some emerging trends, emerging technologies that we see that could be really applicable. So it could be things like connect automated vehicles, broadband access, crowdsourcing data, just as a few examples in terms of what we looked at. Next slide. But to just give you a high level picture, just to start off the conversation, rural areas, we understand that rural areas do have a unique set of challenges in terms of mobility and even reliability. There are larger geographic areas that create longer trip durations and can lead to even longer emergency response times, given where the incidents may be at, especially if they're in remote areas that may not have as much cell phone coverage. You may have a high number of one or even two lane roads that experience disruptions due to things like crashes or even slow moving vehicles, particularly agricultural vehicles. Next slide. So given on top of that, you also have to factor in, there are fewer alternate routes in rural areas. So if there is a work zone or if there's an incident, the detour routes may take a very long time to maneuver, and there may not even be one available depending on where it's at. So that's something we have to consider. Many rural roads are made of gravel and dirt and may make them a potential safety hazard and even impassable in certain weather events. And it's also a challenge of, challenging driving conditions, especially if you're going into steep mountain grades, drop-offs, sharp curves, and even narrow bridges. And even the presence of animals on roadsides can increase the likelihood of collisions with vehicles and pose their own safety issues. Next slide. Also factoring in maybe certain evacuations of natural disasters, maybe as it relates to hurricanes, wildfires, flooding, that can present even more of a challenge. And even in avalanches in certain parts of the country can definitely present its own challenge and safety hazards as well. We talked about briefly about telecommunications, cell phone coverage. There tends to be some gaps there due to lack of power and infrastructure that's deployed in rural areas. And also the capabilities can be spotty and maybe not so dependable. Next slide. So now that we talked briefly about just at a high level on the rural landscape, I just really want to hone in on the Tismo element. So to make sure we're on the same page, here's our definition of Tismo as in legislation. It's an integrated program that optimizes the performance of the existing multimodal infrastructure through implementation of system services and projects to preserve capacity and improve security, safety, and reliability of transportation systems. So Tismo, by its own definition, it's multimodal in nature. It's cross-jurisdictional because that's recognizing that the driver of the vehicle is not going to care who owns the road. They're just going to be caring about whether or not they get to their place on time and in a consistent manner, a safe and consistent manner. And then really looking for options to improve the performance and even optimize it without looking into adding capacity. So that's the context of Tismo that we're exploring. Next slide. So some of the benefits that we found through Tismo, greater reliability in traffic, improved safety, reduced congestion, less wasted fuel. There's improved components in terms of livability, economic vitality, and in general, it's a more efficient use of resources, particularly in terms of facilities and funding. Next slide. So we talked about some of the challenges in rural areas. I won't repeat too much of what you see here, but I just want to make sure we keep that in mind where we're talking about a large geographical area with few alternative routes, difficulty in accessing power communications, even a high cost to bring that out there, fewer resources that may be available, and even historically, there could be some underserved areas in rural parts due to historic underinvestment. Next slide. Another key issue that we found is that, in cases of vandalism and theft of rural technology and materials, such as copper theft, as an example, there's staffing and workforce development in terms of the unique difficulty in hiring and retaining skill and maintenance technicians for these rural technologies, and then alternative transportation modes other than the automobile. There could be much fewer options and less frequent services in these areas. So next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis, who's definitely key in the research and developing this material, just to go through each of the 5 issues that we talked about in terms of some of the issues that we see and where Tismo can be applicable. So I'll turn over to Dennis.
Thanks, Joe. Let me switch screens here real quick. And so Joe talked about the overall arching concerns in the rural area, and we're going to talk specifically about some of the issues in different areas, such as road weather management. So the issues related to that would be managing snowplow operations over a large geographic area, managing evacuations from natural disasters such as hurricanes, forest fires, flooding, collecting road conditions and closure information in rural areas that lack quality sensors or data, and then blocking and spilling into traffic lanes in chain-up areas. Some of the benefits related to road weather management would be early warning and detection can improve the road user safety, quality real-time information can improve pre-trip planning, and then allocate limited road weather equipment more efficiently and improve reliability and reduce unexpected delays. So some of the common strategies related to road weather management would be the use of dynamic message signs for real-time weather alerts and pavement condition information, speed advisory messages to encourage drivers to comply with recommended safe speeds in response to deteriorating weather conditions. Flashing beacons may be activated manually or automatically if tied to a road weather monitoring system. In the area of traffic incident management, it's difficult to gauge proper incident response levels needed given reduced monitoring equipment and communications. Greater spacing of interchanges on rural interstates makes access to incidents more difficult, and roughly a 50% longer emergency response time occurs in rural areas. Also, there's dedicated incident response requires ongoing commitments of funding. It's easy in the urban areas, but it's a little more difficult in the rural areas. And there's also a limited understanding whether a dedicated incident response program is cost effective in rural areas. But some of the potential benefits of traffic incident management would be to reduce the duration and impacts of traffic incidents, improve the safety of motorists, crash victims, and emergency responders, and overall minimize delays and road closures. So some of the common strategies to achieve this would be quick clearance policies and procedures that aim to promptly remove vehicles, and traffic incident management programs that provide courtesy patrols or service patrols. In the area of work zone management, some of the specific issues are unexpected queues in usually uncongested areas, which can lead to severe crashes and delays. Inattention on long rural work zones or long stretches leading up to work zones causes increased crashes. And multiple active work zones in a single corridor can limit movement of oversized vehicles and create long detours. But some of the benefits that arise out of these strategies could be enhancing safety of both the road user and workers, reduce aggressive maneuvers at work zones, improve ability to react to stopped or slow traffic, and reduce the impact on worker productivity. Some of the common strategies for work zone management is smart work zone systems with dynamic message signs, video cameras, and radar provide motorists with real-time traffic updates. And then where stopping is mandatory in a work zone, drivers are required to turn on their emergency warning flashes to alert following vehicles of the work zone stopping condition. Related to special event management in rural areas, events are less frequent, providing fewer opportunities to learn what works best. It's difficult to anticipate demand, projected congestion conditions, and determine appropriate event management strategies when all events are unique. And then collaboration with law enforcement and transportation agencies to coordinate event management in rural areas is limited in some cases. But the benefit side of these strategies could significantly improve the safety and reduce delay due to increased congestion. It can also allow event participants to smoothly and efficiently enter and exit the event location, and you can encourage multi-mode transportation options. So some of the common strategies would be to schedule sufficient time before the event for planning and coordination among stakeholders. You can use separate radio frequencies to aid communication among event coordinators and staff. Ensure open communication among stakeholders before, during, and after the event, and then hold post-event meetings to identify lessons learned, shortcomings, and successful practices for future events. Seasonal demand management issues are going to be, increase in traffic demands resulting in congestion and traffic delays, such as, beaches in the summer or mountains during snowstorms. And potential weather conditions that only allow road work during peak tourism season. The benefits, obviously, of trying to address these would be to reduce congestion, improve safety, and to improve travel time reliability. So some of the common strategies for this would be contraflow lanes, reversible lane operations, and emergency shoulder use can all increase capacity of a roadway network. And then adaptive signal control can be used to manage seasonal congestion for fluctuating travel demand. In the area, Joe did mention emerging trends and technologies, specifically for rural areas. Some of the trends are transportation network companies providing service in rural areas, using crowdsourced data, and the interest in expanding broadband communications into the rural areas. Oops, sorry. And some of the emerging technologies would be related to connected vehicles in terms of communications and warning systems, and then the use of unmanned aerial systems. With that, I'll turn it back over to Joe.
Yeah, at this point, we can turn it over to Mike from Montana DOT and share with his experience in road weather management.
Certainly, thank you. Let me get my presentation here. Be able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Great, Mike.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Mike Horn. I'm with the Montana Department of Transportation. I'm in Maintenance Division, Systems and Operations, and our rural TMC is within my bureau. So in the fall of 2020, Montana implemented a centralized transportation management center, and our goals were really to provide 24/7, 365 support for maintenance operations primarily, but all department operations in general. We also wanted to improve the frequency and consistency of travel-related messaging. And create an organizational infrastructure that could support future ITS implementations. Our challenges prior to implementing this TMC, during the winter months, Montana will, our maintenance forces will staff up with seasonal staff, November to March, and in our 5 districts. And at that same time, the districts before our TMC would also staff up with office staff. So this was the only time that we would have 24/7 coverage in the office or on the road, would be November to March, prior to our TMC. So our field forces generally communicate via radio, analog radio, that reaches back to their local office, with relays. Great coverage, well, good coverage regionally, no coverage statewide. With the large number of relays, like I said, our topography just prevents those signals from getting very far outside of a specific region. We were faced with the fact that off-season incidents were continuing to increase, and emergency medical services, local law enforcement, our Montana Highway Patrol, our state police needed a better way to contact our forces more easily and more reliably. So we took a look at the challenges, and senior management wanted to implement a TMC. Their first hurdle was staffing. We looked at what it would take to staff 24/7, 365 locally versus centrally, and determined that our highest likelihood of success would be to go to centralize this. So we made the decision to centralize. We approached the 2019 legislature, asked for 7 full-time permanent positions, and we were actually granted those positions, which was kind of unusual in Montana, I'm sure in many states. We took the aggregated positions, the seasonal staff that were hired in the districts, and we transferred those to headquarters also. So our first hurdle was staffing. We overcame that, legislative approval. Next hurdle was communication. And as I said, we have our truck radios are all analog currently, or they were at the time, and they still are. Had good communication at the district level with all the relays that we had, but there was no statewide communication. So we looked at a couple of different options. The microwave radio network that our state police uses, we looked at that. It could support our use as well. And coincidentally, the state police is centralized. Their dispatch is centralized in Helena, also where we are. So we took a look at that. We also took a look at ROIP, radio over IP, and the current radios that we use are Zetron radios, and Zetron fit in well with the ROIP option. So looking through both options, we decided to go with the ROIP, the Zetron. It was a lower cost. We already had that deployed in all of our plow trucks. We were already familiar with it. We had the relays in place. What we ended up doing was installing a gateway in many of our area offices, and that gateway was taking that analog signal coming in from the field radios, digitizing it, and then transferring it over the state network. So our second hurdle was solved. We were able to get communication back centrally. So now we could move forward with developing a TMC. So our TMC built out. We worked on standard operating procedures. We created our job profiles. All this was done in late spring, early summer of 2020. So kind of right in the middle of COVID, we were doing all this. We had to determine where we were going to locate the TMC. We had to, like I said, from scratch, we had to build the profiles. We had to hire dispatchers, hired 6 full-time, hired a communications tech, had to determine a location for it. We looked again at co-locating with our state police. didn't look like that was going to give us enough room for what we wanted to do. So we built in-house. We had a location available, and with most of our staff teleworking, we had a lot of space to work with. So we built an in-house location where we can have 7 operators at once on the radios, on the phones, working the entire state. So we got the permission to hire employees July 1st. We got all the hirings done, got them all trained, actually went live with our TMC on October 24th, 2020. And the first 2 days of operation, we had probably the biggest snowstorm we've had in the last 5 or 6 years. Dropped 18 inches right here in town, which was kind of unheard of, but also a statewide storm, which was unusual for Montana. The size of the state, usually we hit a few areas at once, but TMC held up well. Our TMC areas of responsibility, these have grown and matured a little bit since we first implemented, but anything that hits our traveler information map should come through our TMC. They're the ones that put information out there. We provide 24/7 coverage for all MDT employees. I said in the beginning, the initial push was for our maintenance staff. They're the ones that are primarily out after hours, especially during the winter. We run winter operations 24/7 if there's a storm going on, a weather event. But we do provide we do provide coverage for all of our staff, our construction crews, our engineering project managers. They'll contact our TMC for information, to place incidents on the map, for help when needed as well. So also provide all communication with emergency providers. So state police, our Montana Highway Patrol, local law enforcement, tribal law enforcement. Their first call is our TMC, and then we contact our forces for dispatch. And our TMC also manages all our variable message signs. So they 2 big things are the travel information software, and then the dynamic or variable message signs, getting those messages out. Area offices are still staffed during business hours. Says here they deal with local public requests for sand. Most of that's starting to come in through the TMC now. A lot of it's bypassed the area offices. We didn't really promote or advertise the number for the TMC, but of course that's got out. So people will contact it directly or get transferred from area offices. Yeah. So we're just getting ready for our third winter of operations in our TMC, and some of the lessons we've learned as we implemented check-in, check-out, weekday operation support, temporary staff. So check-in, check-out, all of our staff during the winter months are required to radio in to check in to service, and then at the end of the day, they check out of service also. Safety thing, these guys in Montana, at least during the winter months, when they arrive at work, they're generally showing up, getting in a truck and heading out on the road to take care of the road. There are times when they don't have to, but that's probably 90% of what they're doing. So those staff check in, check out. As a statewide operation, we really learned early on that we had to stagger that before all this was happening in the districts, and it was easy for them to handle the volume. Our TMC now, coming through these Zetron machines, our TMC operators have access to every relay and every radio in the state. So it can get quite busy and quite noisy in there. So we've had to stagger our check-in, check-out just a little bit. We're actually going to do something different with the check-out this year, but I'll get to that in a moment. Second lesson learned was weekday operation support. When we were first setting this up, we really looked at what our state highway patrol had and how they were staffing their call center. And we kind of made some assumptions based upon how they were doing work. And what we realized very quickly on was that we needed to be staffed when our employees were at work, and that's our maintenance forces. So we're still staffed on the weekends and overnight, and we do ramp up during weather events, but our primary, we're busiest Monday through Friday during the day when our staff is on, when our field staff is working. So we really adjusted our hours to mesh with that. Temporary staff, we learned after the very first year, we really tried to hire fewer temporary staff and give them longer shifts, and that didn't work as well as last year. What we did was we hired a lot more temporary staff, and we started them on shorter shifts. So we started most of our temporary staff, except for our returners, we'd start at 20 to 30 hours a week. Had to hire more staff that way, and fortunately, we've been lucky that we haven't had an issue doing that. We've been able to hire those staff. So we had to hire more staff that way, but it also give us a lot of leeway when these individuals, if these individuals left work early, decided they found a permanent job somewhere else. Temporary staff, the transitory nature of some of the employees you get, this just gave us a lot more flexibility to pick those hours up, to distribute them to other staff without running into overtime situations. And then networks dependency has been huge. When we first implemented our TMC, we were using a homegrown travel software system, and so it was in the state domain, in the state network. So we were dependent on the state network to access our travel information system, and we were dependent on the state network to get our radio signals from our plow drivers. That's been tough, and we've been working with our communication folks to try to come up with ways around that, especially for the radios. We've moved our travel information system to a vendor hosted system, and that's helped quite a bit with that network dependency. So in the middle of all this, we did implement a new traveler information system. We replaced a 20-year-old homegrown system with the Iteris product. They were our 511 IVR vendor, and we partnered with them for their mobile apps and website. So we rolled those out last September, and that's been going well. They also added a function in the travel software to allow us to do call logging and check in, check out our employees. And the check in, check out's been very beneficial, gives us a really quick way. Our operators always have that software up. It gives them a really quick way to check people into service. They can check an entire section into service quite easily. And because it's all in the travel software, one of the things that we're going to be working on is pushing out. All of our forces have access to that. We're going to be pushing out access for enhanced access for supervisors and superintendents one level above the supervisor, so that they'll actually be able to do some of that checkout themselves and do some condition reporting themselves if they so desire. So future direction, implementing the TMC was we knew that was the basis for any ITS initiatives that we want to come down the road. So this gives us now a 24/7 presence that can monitor and respond to any of these other ITS initiatives that we hope to do. We're currently evaluating Iris for an ATMS software. We're discussing with our engineering group about smart work zones. We just this summer did a variable speed limit proof of concept, an area outside of Glacier Park where the traffic backs up because of entry into the park onto the highway, and we've implemented, or we did a seasonal implementation of a variable speed limit. Seemed to go pretty well. Got a lot of work to do before we make it mainstream, but that's already been in place. We want to get into wrong-way ramp detection and event management as well. And I think that's about all I have. So I thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Mike. Yeah, thanks, Mike. We'll hold off questions to the end, but if you have any questions toward Mike, if you want to put in the chat box, you can do that anytime. We can get to that after the presentations. So next, we're going to hear from Georgia DOT to discuss their CHAMP program, and we have Brian Purvis online. So I'll turn over to Brian.
Yeah, Joe, thanks. I appreciate it. So interesting topic today. Of all days, we've actually got a Hurricane Ian bearing down on us. Quite a bit different than Montana. We do get some snow, nothing like what you guys probably get on a regular basis, but we are in an active hurricane season and getting hit directly right now. So interesting times. But so I'm here to talk on behalf of Georgia Department of Transportation. Chad Hendon sends his apologies. He was originally slated to do this presentation today, but obviously there's a lot going on in the state right now as far as coordination. But the CHAMP program, this was actually started in 2016, back in November of 2016. We started patrols in 2017. So this program, we had the benefit of partnering with GDOT's HERO program. The HERO program, as y'all have probably aware, they've been around since the mid 90s, put in place prior to the Atlanta 96 Olympics, along with their very robust traffic management center. So this program, we started patrols outside of Metro Atlanta. This was right out of our contract. So one of our big things when we started out was roadway clearance, clearing debris, tagging vehicles, trees and other items that could be affecting the roadway. Traffic incident management was a big part of our push when we initiated this program, providing temporary traffic control at incident scenes, coordinating with first responders, updating the traffic management center. A big part of it was also motorist assistance. If it was a gallon or two of gas, changing tires, jumping batteries, minor things that we could do to keep motorists on the interstate moving and get them at least to the next exit, if not to their destination. If it was something outside of our scope or what we could do, we typically would just call rotation tow. We didn't call them directly. We called either state highway patrol or the law enforcement and had them, oops, am I not sharing?
Hey, Brian, you weren't sharing. I'm happy to do it from my screen or go ahead and do it from your.
Yeah, let me see. I forgot to hit the share button. My bad.
Looks great.
It's showing up now?
Sure is. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. So again, this program started in 2016. We started patrolling in February of 2017. The motorist assistance was a big part and really, where we got a lot of our positive press and outreach. But integrating with the traffic incident management community with the first responders was a big part of this program. One of the things that has steadily grown, and I'll show you a lot of stats on this, was our roadway maintenance assistance. So this is a little over 1,000 miles of rural interstate outside of Metro Atlanta. So that's been a big component of our program. We run operations 365 days a year, 7 days a week, including holidays. Our patrols, we run 2 shifts, and the total time for our patrols is 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. Again, 7 days a week. We also respond after hours. So if there's major crashes, major things like a storm coming in or even planned events, we will switch our 8-hour shifts to 12 hours and patrol overnight as needed. Or if something happens between 10:30 p.m. and 6 a.m., we have on-call staff that can come out and respond with temporary traffic control or quick clearance techniques. We also have, as part of this program, we expanded the Atlanta Traffic Management Center and our Thomaston Center down in Central Georgia to include a dispatch center in all 6 of the GDOT districts that we operate in. District 7 is the Metro Atlanta region, so they already have the Atlanta TMC and HERO. So we did add 6 dispatch centers in the GDOT facilities around the state. to help with the coordination of this. And that's been a big asset to integrate. So obviously this is a map of the state of Georgia. These are 25 existing routes. We are in talks right now to add even more routes in the Northeast Georgia and over here on I-20, where we've got, limited staff. But as you can see, the dark areas were our initial routes, and these areas in blue are areas that we have expanded our coverage since we started this program. So we've had a lot of growth in this program in the last 6 years since we started it out. Just some facts and figures. The hard part, and where I applaud Georgia and Georgia Department of Transportation specifically, is kind of stepping out, because the problem with a lot of safety service patrols is they're in the large metro areas and have steadily creeped over the last couple of decades into the urban areas, but not into the rural. So Georgia took a big leap of faith, funded this program with maintenance money, with GDOT maintenance funds. But the steady growth of the program, especially over the last 3 years, has been exponential. Just last year, we did over 261,000 stops total with this program. That's about 22 to 23,000 stops every month. We're helping about 80,000 motorists a year now. That is a tremendous amount of broke down motorists in rural Georgia, where, as they talked previously, there's not a lot of resources out there. Response times are extremely long. Our average route is about 40 miles. So our response times are just over 21 minutes. But the little note up in the corner, that's on the ones that we're dispatched to. So we have a very elaborate 511 system where motorists can call 511. And Georgia is one of the unique states where you can actually talk to a live operator. So if you need the GDOT Hero program in Metro Atlanta or CHAMP in rural Georgia on the interstates, anybody can call 511 and request our assistance. So it's less than 5% of the incidents that we're responding to. So about 21,000 stops. Our average response time is somewhere around 0 to 1 minute. We find 21,000 stops. We find the needle in the haystack versus getting dispatched to it, because we're on a constant patrol on these 40-mile average routes. So just a quick breakdown. About a third of what we respond to is debris in the roadway. That does include the shoulders. Roadway maintenance, it's a third of what we're responding to, about 90,000 stops a year. And I'm going to run through some of these things to help maybe, get some of you guys to justify a rural safety service patrol like this program. Motorists Assist, that's a quarter of what we do, about 65,000 motorists a year on average. That's a big number of people that are broke down on the side of the road that need help. Tagging a lot of abandoned vehicles, about 8% of our stops, a little over 20,000 of those a year. Just my personal opinion, abandoned vehicles are 3,000 plus pounds of debris sitting out on your roadway. So it is something that doesn't need to sit out there any longer than possible. And then crashes. If you're trying to justify a rural safety service patrol with crashes, it's probably not going to happen. It's only about 2%. About 6,000 stops a year that we respond to that are crash related, putting out temporary traffic control in the rural areas. I'll be honest, the first responders are pretty good about getting to the scene. We found that, especially during COVID, that it's better for us to provide advance warning. We don't have a lot of ITS. We don't have a lot of overhead message boards. So typically we'll go upstream of the backup to mitigate secondary crashes from happening, and have been very successful with doing that. So just to put it into a statewide perspective, the upper right side of this is a heat map of our crashes last year. So you can kind of see, of our Motorist Assist last year. So you can see, obviously, Metro Atlanta, they do a lot of motorist assist, especially on this 85-75 connector in downtown Atlanta. When you get outside of Metro Atlanta, you know, some of these areas are patrolled, or a lot of them, by GDOT Champ. This is Macon, Georgia. We call it the Macon Triangle. So that's a big area where you get a lot of truck traffic intermingling with local commuters. Same thing with Savannah. You've got an extremely large port over here. Most of that truck traffic is going north up, northwest up I-16 and through 75 or up 85 through Metro Atlanta. So you can kind of see there's a lot of motorist assist in these bigger areas, but we do spread the wealth pretty evenly around the rest of the state. COVID hit in 2019, so we started tracking a lot of what was going on. Traffic kind of died in Hero area in Metro Atlanta. In 2019, ours actually went up in rural Georgia, or our stops did. So we didn't miss a beat when COVID hit. We actually responded to more, and with less motorist assist, it gave us more time to help with roadway maintenance. Still been a steady increase over 2020 to 2021. So again, out of over 450,000 statewide events that we responded to, we covered over half of those, about 261,000 events in 2021. So just a complete steady growth of our operations, and just trying to always streamline and get better with what we were doing out there. So here's how we kind of looked at our program and ways to expand it or justify it. So some of the things we're doing as we got more seasoned with the motorist assist, with the crash response, you know, and debris removal, we started looking at where we could assist GDOT. And what we did is we went into their roadway maintenance database and started looking for opportunities for things that we could work with while we were out there, not just to identify these issues, but in a lot of cases to actually mitigate them and repair them if possible. So potholes, edge failures, you know, and in a lot of these cases, if it's not in the travel lane, we'll carry cold patch and actually go out and quickly patch these. It's kind of a self-serving operation. We're typically pulling over on the shoulders, responding and getting debris and helping motorists. So if these potholes are out there and we can patch them, it saves on our tires, our wear and tear. Plus it also, you know, obviously takes some of that burden off of DOT. This is something we're doing a lot right now. Manual drain cleaning. If it's filled up with too much silt and debris, obviously we'll call GDOT to come and clear it. But a lot of these things, especially in the fall, you know, all the leaves go to the low areas and they'll pile up in all of the drainage devices. So we'll go out there and keep these things clear. With Hurricane Ian coming in this weekend, this is a big focus for us right now. We're out there clearing all of this drainage so that, you know, when we get somewhere around 6 inches of rain in a day or two, that water's got to go somewhere. And if it doesn't go through these drainage devices, it's going to go back in the roadway. So we definitely focus heavily on mitigating against hydroplaning and flooding and water backup and pre-storm, not during and not after, but we want to make sure these things flow properly before. And, you know, we've got a good system out there to can't carry all this wind and rain that's coming. Post Hurricane Ian, this is something that we'll be looking at. Tree trimming and removal and storm cleanup. So all of our trucks, our guys are trained to not to fell trees, but to actually cut them up and clear the roadway. So when we get these types of situations, when they're in the clear zone, when they're on the shoulders, we'll or even in the travel lanes, we'll go out there, cut them, drag them out of the roadway. More planned operation and remove them. So we'll be working extremely close in the later part of the weekends when Hurricane Ian goes through. But this is something that we learned, especially during some snow and ice events when trees fell, that it's a big asset if we're already out there don't just block and put traffic control out for these situations, but actually try to mitigate them. Litter patrol. This is a big part of what we're managing out there. We get a ton of tire debris. Georgia summer is extremely hot, and we get a lot of tractor trailers with retreads out there, and this debris can definitely cause a lot of issues with our motoring public. They're not expecting debris to be in the roadway. And, once you leave at Metro Atlanta and go in any direction in Georgia, your expectation of having disruptions to your travel, it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible, because the expectation is not to be disrupted. So we're often removing unauthorized signs, debris, hazards out there in the roadway. Sign maintenance. We see a lot of signs that get mowed down, so we'll coordinate those types of situations during mowing season. But again, with all the wind that's coming through, we'll definitely see some of these signs leaning. So we'll go in and address those. And again, if we can't, we'll call the DOT sign crew, which is really good at going out and responding. Even visibility situations, buttons and delineators. We'll go out there and straighten these things, remove them if they're hazards. Anything we can do to help flag guardrail for nighttime operations and things like that. Even these minor things make a big difference to the motoring public. And then I've already talked about it, the inclement weather responses. So we've responded to every one of these thunderstorms, flooding, tornadoes, especially after hurricanes, you can typically see some tornadoes. And then especially in the northwest side of the state, we've got some mountainous areas. So we actually do get snow and ice in Georgia quite a bit in the winter. So we've seen quite a few of these. Last year was no exception. We did have 2 major snow events that we responded to. So not whole seasons like we get in the north, or in the west. But typically our storms last a few days, and we can go in there and ramp up our staff and assist where needed. And then obviously crash response. It's a small component of what we have. We don't get the volume of crashes that you get in Metro Atlanta like you have with the hero units. But when we have them, typically they're very high speeds. The severities are very high. And if you don't respond to them and mitigate the backups with advanced warning, your secondary crashes are often a lot worse than the initial crash. So this is something that we really focus on very heavily. So we're out there, again, providing lane closure, advanced warning, diverting traffic if we're shutting down ramps and moving traffic. And then if we've got other major issues like low visibility situations, we'll actually go out and sign for that. And then whatever else DOT comes up with, special maintenance activities, we've actually cleared concrete, sweat that. If we've got planned events, if we've got, major things coming to Atlanta, there's times you really want to have your facilities looking top notch, and we'll get out there and assist whatever's needed in those situations. Bridge maintenance. This is something that when you're talking about drainage and the structures, we'll typically look at cleaning out scuppers, weep holes, things like that. And then obviously looking at the roadway and the structures to make sure you're not getting major potholes and major, wear and tear out there that need to be addressed. So, just a quick recap of the maintenance issues that we're doing in 6 out of the 7 districts. So a lot of activity that helps justify our program. So training is a big part of this. We obviously have a new hire training program, chainsaw training, quarterly meetings. We basically meet with all of our staff and spend a day with them, updating our program, advancing it, looking at these types of webinars and finding new ways to do things better and more efficiently. So I appreciate all of you guys attending this, because this is where I got a lot of our skills and a lot of our resources. But again, crash response, it's a small component in rural, but when you need it, it's definitely there. So don't put all your eggs in that basket. Some of the benefits of this program, if you're looking into putting this in your state, we have a single hourly rate for our operators. If they're patrolling, we have a single rate with a fuel escalation. That's the only variable on this program. It's nice for GDOT because our contract is already in place. If they need us to patrol longer hours or they need more operators, we are contracted, so they can just, pull the trigger, hit the easy button, and we can staff up as necessary. Again, we've got a management and a supervision staff that's in place. It did drastically increase Georgia's coverage with Safety Service Patrol and dispatch monitoring. So it definitely helped us with our statewide coordination in Georgia. Our reporting is much better. Our coordination with first responders and 911 centers has gotten a lot better. And obviously we're tied in directly with the local GDOT maintenance forces, which has been a huge benefit to this program. The other thing is with an hourly rate, it's easily expandable. If we need additional services, additional times, or additional resources, it's basically just, a point and click type situation. So with that, again, Chad Hendon apologizes he wasn't able to join today. But that's his contact information and mine as well, if you'd like to reach out. And anything we can do to help justify these programs, I will tell you, it's been a overwhelming success in the state of Georgia and greatly enhanced the traffic operations. So with that, Joe, I'll turn it back. I appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Brian. Very good presentation on what's going on in Georgia. So again, just a reminder, we'll save our questions for all the panelists to the end. We have one more presentation, but if you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to enter in the chat box. Looks like we have one already. We'll get to after our next presenter. So our next presenter is John Suamala, who is from South Dakota DOT, who will be sharing their experience surrounding the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm John Suamala, and I'm the Operations Traffic Engineer for the South Dakota DOT as of last January. But prior to that, I was the Rapid City Region Traffic Engineer, where one of my responsibilities was to manage the South Dakota DOT's yearly traffic control efforts for the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. First, I want to give you some context to help you understand some of the challenges that we face with rally traffic. Black Hills are home to popular tourist attractions such as Custer State Park, Devil's Tower. Custer State Park is the one on the left there with the buffalo herd. Devil's Tower, which is actually in Wyoming, but still considered part of the Black Hills. Deadwood, the top middle picture there with its casinos and concert venues. Crazy Horse Mountain, the bottom right picture, the world's largest active mountain carving. And of course, Mount Rushmore, which is our biggest tourist attraction in the state. The Black Hills are also well known in the motorcycle community for their winding roads, ideal for riding, such as Iron Mountain Road, which is the picture on the left there with its pigtail bridges and tunnels. Needles Highway, which is the picture on the right, which literally winds through the Needles rock formation in the Black Hills, and Spearfish Canyon, which is the bottom middle picture there. Sturgis itself has a population of under 7,000 people. It's located on the northeast side of the Black Hills on Interstate 90, and it's 23 miles from Rapid City, which has a population of under 70,000 people, but it's the second biggest city in the state and the biggest city in the Black Hills area. So the blue dots on this map show the locations of those tourist attractions and routes that I mentioned, which are all within 80 miles of Sturgis itself. So the places that riders are going when they come to the rally are pretty spread out. Sturgis itself has Main Street shops and bars and several nearby campgrounds that host concerts during the rally. That top left picture, that's on Main Street in Sturgis, same with the one on the bottom right. The middle left picture, I believe that's the Knuckle Saloon, which is one of the bars on Main Street in Sturgis. The one on the top right, that's the Full Throttle Saloon, which is north of Sturgis a little ways. I believe they used to have a reality show based on that saloon. The bottom left is an aerial photo of the Buffalo Chip campgrounds. So you can see when we talk about campgrounds, these are really kind of miniature cities that just kind of appear all of a sudden for rally week. And the middle right picture is also at the Buffalo Chip at one of the concerts that they have there. So you can see quite a few people there. With this, you can see that it's a lot more localized, but it's still spread out enough that people aren't walking from one location to another. They're using vehicles or bikes. So our rally traffic goal is to efficiently provide a safe traveling experience for all travelers in and around the Black Hills through the duration of the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. And the keywords here being all travelers. So even though the bikes are the primary thing and the RVs and trailers that bring those bikes here, we also want to focus on the commuters. There's still a lot of people that live Sturgis, Spearfish area that commute to Rapid City every day for work. Still a lot of truck traffic. I-90's major nationwide corridor for truck traffic. And then also we have tourists, which I always kind of feel bad for the tourists that don't realize the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally is going on and come here that week. So we want to accommodate all the different modes in this. So to try to achieve this goal, we do a number of things, including changing some speed limits, adding some temporary signals, using message boards and speed trailers, providing some incident support. And then we have our traffic operations center at the South Dakota DOT maintenance shop in Sturgis for this week. And I'll go over each of these. In an effort to get traffic all going closer to the same speed, we lower some speed limits to match the operating speeds. So these all go into effect the Thursday before the rally starts. The rally always starts the first Friday in August. So these go into effect the day before that, and then go through the last Sunday. So the rally lasts that week plus a couple days. So so the ones where we lower speed limits on Interstate 90 from Rapid City, where the speed limit is always 65 miles an hour going through Rapid City. So we continue that from Rapid City all the way through Sturgis. The speed limit's normally 75 miles an hour. For that stretch, we lower it to 65. On South Dakota Highway 34, which goes through Sturgis and then goes east, from the east side of Sturgis, where the speed limit's 35 through Sturgis, and then going east 3.8 miles to get east of the Buffalo Chip campground. The speed limit normally in this section is either 65 or 45 closer to Sturgis, and we lower all that down to 35 miles an hour. Also on South Dakota Highway 79, from the intersection with South Dakota 34, going north 1.75 miles to go north of the Iron Horse campground there. And then also from Bighorn Road north 0.8 of a mile. So that is near the area of the Full Throttle Saloon and Drag Pipe Saloon entrances. So that area drops from 65 miles an hour down to 45 miles an hour. With the drastic increases in traffic volumes for this week, there are a number of intersections that for the rest of the year function fine with stop control. But for this week, we need signals to operate efficiently. So these include both portable and seasonal signals. So the portables being trailers that we haul out and put in place. And then the seasonal signals where we have all of the the poles and infrastructure in place, and then we just uncover the signal heads for this week and operate the signals. So locations where we do this, US 16 and 385, which is in the top picture there next to Hill City. This is kind of a intersection where traffic going from those tourist attractions in the Southern Hills, where they'll go back up towards Sturgis, Deadwood area, or some of them go back through Rapid City and take the interstate that way. So it's kind of a busy intersection for this week. 385 and 44, which is the next one, intersection north on the top map there, kind of the same deal there with that traffic going from the Southern Hills back up to the Northern Hills. In Sturgis, there's South Dakota 34 and 11th Street. It's kind of by where the Indian motorcycle dealership is, so a lot of extra traffic there this week. South Dakota 34 and the Fort Meade entrance. Fort Meade is a VA hospital and a National Guard camp. South Dakota 34 and 79, the junction of those two state highways, which is between Sturgis and a lot of the campgrounds east of Sturgis. And then South Dakota 34 and Fort Meade Way, which is kind of the turn to go to the Buffalo Chip campground. And then seasonal signals, I-90 exit 32, both eastbound and westbound ramps. And then I-90 exit 55, which is kind of on the west side of Rapid City. It's where the Harley Davidson dealership is in Rapid City. So there's a lot of traffic going to that this week. And then in Sturgis, the South Dakota 34 Nelly Street signal, and then a little bit east of Sturgis, South Dakota 34 and Glencoe Drive intersection, kind of between Sturgis and those campgrounds to the east there. So here's a picture of one of our setups. This is at the Fort Meade entrance. This is our only multi-lane setup. Most of our setups are single through lane with a left turn lane. On routes where we have historically seen the most crashes occur, we'll set up message boards to notify drivers when there's a crash ahead. Many of these routes are high speed, where it's important to notify drivers of crash ahead to prevent secondary crashes. But some are just narrow roads that we want to divert traffic from if possible to allow emergency vehicles to access the site. So the purpose to prevent secondary crashes by advanced notification of slow to stop traffic. We have our 10 permanent boards in the region along I-90 in Spearfish, Sturgis, Rapid City, and Wall, which is to the east off the map that's shown there. And then we also have Custer State Park on US 16A and Iron Mountain Road. Those are both narrow, windy roads. From Custer to Hill City and Hill City to Rapid City on US 16. Those are higher speed routes, not as windy. And then Boulder Canyon, which is between Sturgis and Deadwood. From Cheyenne Crossing to Lead, which is southwest of Deadwood there. And then from Deadwood down to Three Forks or the Hill City area. Those are all kind of combination. They have parts that are windier, but then also they're higher speed routes as well. So there you can see kind of one of our typical setups. This is one in Boulder Canyon between Sturgis and Deadwood. When there's nothing going on, we will put a message on there, curbs ahead, use caution, just to have something that so drivers are aware and give them that warning. But then when a crash occurs, we can remotely change the message, say crash 5 miles ahead, be prepared to stop. So drivers are aware and can expect to see stop traffic. So it's not a surprise to them and prevent those secondary crashes from occurring. There are a few locations where we particularly want to draw drivers' attention to their speed. So we'll set up portable radar speed feedback signs, or RISFIS as we call them, on South Dakota 79, northbound and southbound by the Full Throttle Saloon. That's the bottom right picture there. You kind of come up over a hill, and after driving through seemingly empty prairie for hours, all of a sudden it's like there's a city in the road or alongside the road. So, and that's one of the areas where the speed limit drops. So we want drivers to be aware of their speed there. And then also on South Dakota Highway 87 going northbound, this is the top right picture. This is kind of coming downhill from Mount Coolidge. There's a curve that historically we've had some runoff road crashes, a curve that's kind of gradual and all of a sudden gets sharper. So we want drivers to be aware of their speed there. And then the picture on the left is just a location where we have a permanent Riz Fizz, but it wasn't operating during the rally. So we got one of our trailers out there to make sure drivers knew their speed there, as that tends to always be a tough location. And then we provide incident support. So we have call out vehicles located in Rapid City, Sturgis, Deadwood, Custer, and Belle Fourche. Purpose of these is to support law enforcement at crash and incident scenes. What we have is 2 highway maintenance workers with traffic control devices to close or flag a lane of traffic. This week, we typically aren't doing maintenance work on the roads anyways, because we don't want to be out in the traffic that comes with the rally. So that is something for those maintenance workers to do that week. They're dispatched from the Traffic Operations Center upon request. We used to just have them go out anytime we saw a crash occur, but we were finding that a lot of times it would be clear before they got there, and sometimes the extra flashing lights aren't necessarily needed at locations. It can cause more harm than good. So we wait until law enforcement requests help. So then we'll dispatch the incident support to the locations. As part of this, we also have a front end loader stationed on I-90 at exit 34. We don't have a frontage road in this area to be able to divert traffic onto if something were to be blocking a lane of the interstate. We haven't had to use it yet in the time that we've had that plan, but if we don't get a lane open in time, we end up with something that looks like this. This was a few years ago in an afternoon. Right behind where this picture was taken, there was a incident that occurred and just closed one lane of traffic. So this isn't even completely blocking the road. And I do want to point out here that in South Dakota, it is not legal to take the shoulder to go around stop traffic. Those are people just driving illegally there. So. And then we have, at the heart of it all, we have our Traffic Operations Center. It's located in the DOT shop in Sturgis. It's operational from the first Friday of the rally through the last Saturday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Those hours can change due to traffic demands, but it's pretty standard that those are our hours. What we're doing there, we're monitoring cameras for incidents, equipment issues, and backups. It's typically our 511 cameras, but then we also piggyback off DCI, who has cameras in and around Sturgis that week. So they let us also use them to for watching traffic. We're monitoring crashes, both on the radio and on Highway Patrol software for the call out vehicle deployment if we're requested, and then also for message board notification to be able to change the messages if there are crashes that occur. We're also managing traffic counting operations. We have tube counters set up through the area to count how much traffic is entering Sturgis this week. And then we'll also set up cameras to do some traffic counts at specific intersections through the week. Here's a picture of our Traffic Operations Center. Not much to it. We got the screen in the front there where we got a number of different views that we can select and look closer in on, and a lot of them are pan tilt zoom, so we can look around and see what exactly we want to see at the locations. Same thing, just looking at a different angle. Over on the left there, we have the Highway Patrol software, which shows us crashes in the area which are occurring. And then when we can click on them and see pretty much the dialogue, all the dialogue that goes on with dispatch on each one, so we can look and see okay, is life flight on the way? Has a wrecker gotten the bike out of the road yet? All that information that we need to know. And then also we can see what law enforcement is assigned to that crash. And then it'll also have their phone number so we can call and ask them. You know, it's typically after things have died down and it's still up there and we're not sure what's going on, we can kind of call them and ask, okay, has the scene cleared yet? Is traffic flowing? Should we take messages off the boards for that? A few other items that we do. Highway Patrol has escorted tours for groups of 50 to 200 motorcycles. We were finding that there'd be these really large groups of motorcycles that would go on a ride, and as they progress through the hills, they would have a couple bikes kind of pull off and block intersections, even like signalized intersections, to let their whole ride get through, which would cause a lot of traffic backups and road rage incidents. So if we figure, okay, if we got Highway Patrol with them, we can control the size of the ride and how they proceed on their route. And we can work with them and give them a route that works well, you know, more right turns and left turns and things like that. And then we, at the signal at South Dakota 34 and Nellie Street, we have a person there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. manning the signal because this is the turn to the hospital from the campgrounds on the east side of Sturgis. So to help them get to the hospital easier, we have that the guy manning that signal there. And that's all I have for you today. So I will turn it back over to Joe.
All right, great. Thanks, John. Definitely a great presentation. So I believe we go till 2:30, so we have about 12 minutes left. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat box, or I don't know if Adam may have an option to speak in the speak through the web room. But as you're thinking through some questions, I'll go through some of the chat box, and I believe Brian has answered some of them, but I'm not sure if the folks can read it. So I'll go through them real quickly. So Stephanie Merrick asks, for GDA, where do you station your safety patrol trucks and for rural areas? And Brian's answer is that the operators will take their vehicles home since they don't report to any particular office. It makes it easier and for a quicker response for overnight incidents. Tracy Scriba from FHWA asks about public feedback on CHAMP, and has that been used to improve services or make the business case for CHAMP in rural areas? And Brian's answering that they have a lot of positive feedbacks in the form of thank you, either through their website or their Facebook page or their 511 line. That's definitely helped justify their program. So Brian, I don't know if you want to expand on that any?
Yeah, so we don't really hand out contact cards. We tell the motorists to typically just call 511 and provide feedback. The TMC actually has people that field those calls, and they fill out a form for them. But again, we if they want to fill something out, they'll sometimes go out on their own and find Facebook and DOT's website and fill stuff out. But yeah, we get a ton of thank you notes from customers. Never really any recommendations or ideas for services, but typically they're all just thank yous, and we appreciate CHAMP. So and those get read at a lot of the DOT commissioners meetings and stuff like that. So it's a very positive program, and and that's typically the only thing they recognize is the Motorists Assist. They're not even recognizing the tens of thousands of things we're doing every month that they don't even know about. So that's the other positive feedback we get is from the DOT folks themselves, and how it's relieved them from late night calls for maintenance responses, to minor crashes, to traffic control, to debris and minor things like that. So the DOT is also one of our biggest advocates now.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Brian. Tony Casella, this one's for John. Are you using permanent or portable cameras? The portable, are they trailer mounted?
Typically they are permanent, but This year, we did have a few of our newer message boards come with cameras. So we did use a few trailer mounted ones for the first time this year.
Okay, great. We have a couple for Mike in Montana from Anonymous. They got a few Anonymous. I'm not sure if it's the same one or not. Do you have any tips for a rural state trying to get leadership support for building its first TMC?
We just really hit on the safety aspect of it. I mean, that was our guys were out oftentimes without anybody really knowing where they were or what they were doing, without anybody to check in on them. So we really hit the safety aspect of it. Now we've got a lot of additional support from like State Highway Patrol and some of these others, because it's much easier for them to get a hold of our forces in case there's a problem. They just call the TMC, and the TMC is the one that tracks down whoever on our staff that should be responding.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Richard D in chat box says secondary crashes really help sell that story. I'm not sure if that's in the context of Mike's question or overall, but yeah, definitely. Another one, Mike, I guess Mike responded to, but for regarding the TMC's role in construction and work zone management and travel information, how does TMC know where work zones are setting up and have lanes closed? And Mike's answer is project managers provide construction details and update information weekly. TMC manages construction zones on the travel map. Did you want anything to expand on, Mike?
No, I mean, that I think that pretty well covers it. We're working on making it easier for them, for our construction managers to get us that information, but they do supply that. Our maintenance forces supply information on work zones as well, which in Montana, it'd be if our maintenance forces are doing a chip seal, or they're doing a crack seal or something like that, they'll let us know. They'll call us in the morning. We'll put a zone on the map, and then they'll call us when they're done.
Okay, thanks. Another one for Brian for Champ is, do you have Champ only station on interstates, or does it include state U.S. routes?
Right now, it's all interstates. There are a couple of local jurisdictions that have requested that we take over some U.S. routes, but our contract is written kind of loose for that. We're contracted to patrol interstates, but if there's a major incident off of an interstate that we need to respond to on behalf of DOT, maybe they're tied up with something else. We've gone to non-interstate routes. We've actually gone into other states. We've gone into Florida, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and helped out in those states also. So the cross-border coordination is one example. But, you know, if it's right off of an interstate and maybe it's a blind curve and responders are on the wrong side of it, you know, we'll definitely go out there and provide advance warning in those types of situations. So
Great.
Probably going to some of the U.S. routes in the future, though. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Richard Dean clarified as far as funding TMC, and want to clarify, he's talking about minimizing secondary crashes. Yeah, we can tell that, but thanks for clarifying. Trying to see if there's any other questions here. Looks like they're beating you to it in terms of answering. And yeah, Adam, I don't know if they can see what's in the chat box or not.
Yeah, everybody for the most part can see what's in the chat box. I see some comments coming in, and everybody should be able to see the answers in the Q&A box now. But some of them we might want to walk through. There's some good answers in there too.
Okay, yeah, definitely. There's one that looks like it's addressed to all three. For all, do you track how crash data may have changed as you have enhanced your Tismo efforts? And also relates to the congestion data. You want to go first?
I guess I'll jump in first. We haven't yet. We're still too early in that. Crash data is tracked by by another group here, but I think it's definitely something we want to look at.
Okay. Brian, looks like you added something, but do you want to build on that?
Oh, no, I was just answering it just in case they didn't hear.
Okay.
The patrolling. So yeah, we patrol interstates, but we respond as needed or requested anywhere.
Okay. And John?
It's kind of hard with the rally just being 1 week from the year, but we can kind of compare from one rally to the next. But I mean, it kind of depends on the number of people that are here for the rally that particular year. But we, have all the crash data, and we could compare if we felt the need to there.
Okay. Yeah, and the rally is usually a week long, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. I think I've got them all, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I missed any. If anyone else is thinking about asking, go ahead and type it in the chat box. Maybe one last one. I'll throw one out for all three. At the beginning, we talked about looking into the potential roles of emerging trends in technology. I know we highlighted some like connected vehicle and crowdsourcing data and unmanned aerial vehicles and TNCs and broadband communication. And I know it looks like Montana was looking at improving their radio communications. It looks like a lot, listen to the presentations, a lot of it's just like the basic Tismo strategies and just improving the overall process and just the underlying foundation, which is great. I guess for all three, is there any of these emerging trends or technologies or others that you're starting to look into or have conversations about that might impact how you're doing these activities?
Yeah, this is Brian on the CHAMP program. So we're always looking for new technologies. All of our trucks have message boards. We do not use arrow boards. Communicating is important to the traveling public, especially when we've got limited ITS in the rural areas. So we're actually looking at things like PI lights, the flashing pucks, integrating those with HAAS alerts, HAAS, which basically puts up predetermined messages to the traveling public via Waze. Those are soon to be integrated with Google Maps. I know they're in Chrysler products, and I think Audi and a couple other manufacturers. So there's a lot of technology, and in rural areas, the expectation to stop is not there. So anything you can do to protect emergency responders and, more importantly, protect yourselves out there on the roadway with advanced warning, I'd say that's a good place to put your money and your efforts.
Thanks. Very good point, Brian. Any other thoughts? Okay. Check the chat box for any more questions. Any major, I don't know, I can't remember, John, if I asked you this, but any major issues with signal or picture quality with your portable CCTV from a rural perspective?
At times it's not the best, but it kind of gets us the pictures that we need. We're kind of, just looking for traffic backups and issues with signals, things like that, which we can get even if it's not, a super, streaming video kind of thing, but gets us what we need. Okay.
Thanks, John. All right, so we're right at 2:30, so let's make sure I respect you all's time. So we can go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you all to the presenters. Thank you all for the attendees for showing up and asking the good questions you're asking. So we hope you got a lot out of this. And again, we're hoping to have the publication where we go more into this on our website in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. So with that, I will turn it back over to Adam.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you to all the attendees. You see Joe's contact information there. The recording and slides will be available later this week. Thank you so much to everybody, and have a great day.